I want to say a few words about karma this morning. Yeah. We have so many associations to karma, don't we? I did for the longest time. For the longest time, I really thought it had so much to do with past lifetimes, future lifetimes. Are there other lifetimes? And the whole wondering about all of that, what that could possibly mean, whether there's some truth to it. Um, I want to understand that more. How could there be many lifetimes? What if that were really true? You know, and then it occurred to me that I'm always wanting to make things as user-friendly as possible. It occurred to me that karma is so much more about what we're creating in the present moment. And how that present moment, of course, has been affected, influenced by all of our previous moments. We don't have to go to a past lifetime. We can go to this lifetime, for starters. That all of the causes and conditions that we've been subjected to, exposed to, had access to, have influenced us. Yeah? From our earliest days with our caregivers, but all along the way, we've been shaped by and influenced by and impacted by many moments of our experience. Yeah. And we're continuing to shape our experience moving forward. Yeah. We're also creating our future. We're seed. I like to think of we're seeding, SEEDING, our future in the way that we're responding to the present moment, which itself is a kind of radical thought. I remember we used to had great appreciation for a teacher who some of you may have known, Ruth Dennison. It's a wonderful out-of-the-box Dharma teacher. She died. It's been a few years ago now.
Like about three
or four years ago. She was teaching right up to the end. We went and saw her do a weekend retreat when she was 89 years old up at IMS. I think it was one of her last. It was as much about her as anything for her lifetime of teaching. But she used to say about karma, people would ask her about what karma was, and she would say, she was a German lady with a German accent, and she would say, it means you don't get away with nothing, darling. You don't get away with nothing, darling, she would say. And there is that sense in karma, in the way that it's understood in Buddhist psychology, that we are heirs to our actions. I think there's a kind of an archaic view, or a kind of, to imagine that, I must have, people can do this with this. I've done this myself. Susan has done this as well. To imagine that if there are particularly difficult things going on in this lifetime, that I must have been a really bad boy in my last lifetime. That's why I'm paying penance for something I did way, way back there. I think it's much more user-friendly and accessible and meaningful, though, to imagine that our actions do have results. And they show up pretty near at hand, actually, if we pay attention closely. And this was the Buddha's response too, really. He didn't talk so much about past lifetimes and future lifetimes. And his most famous story in that regard was this person who came to him. This was a lot of the sutras where somebody would come and ask a question. I said, well, I really want to know about my past lifetimes and what my future, my future hopes for my future lifetime, and what I can, almost like in a fortune-telling way. And the Buddha said, well, let me answer you in this way. If you came to me now and you had just been shot with an arrow in the chest, and the arrow was sticking out of your chest, would you ask me, this shaft of the arrow, I wonder what kind of wood this is. I wonder what kind of tree this arrow was made from. Or these feathers here at the end of the arrow. You know, I wonder what bird. You know, where you know, what bird these feathers came from. Or would you want me to pull out the arrow and treat the wound? Well, of course, noble sir, I would want you to pull out the arrow and treat the wound. Just so. And this is really all what my teaching is about. How to see the arrow, basically, that we have on our chest right now. How to see how we are co-creating our own suffering now. How we are doing that to ourselves now. And how to begin to stop doing that. How to begin to treat the wound. You know? My teaching is about understanding suffering and how we do that to ourselves, and a path to create a movement toward less suffering, toward the end of suffering, but toward less suffering. Yeah. Now you might think, then of course he answered the question about past lifetimes and future lifetimes. He did not. That was the answer. The answer was, I'm not going to answer at that level at which you're spinning out cognitively about this and that while you're still on fire, while you're still burning. In fact, musing on that kind of question is itself can be agitating and not so, but at the very least, not so helpful. Let's just instead take a closer look. Let's instead take a closer look. Yeah. So that was his invitation throughout. And that's really the heart of this practice. You know, so much is about how are we, what are we doing that is contributing? What are we doing that is contributing to our own mental distress, stress and distress? And what can we do to mitigate that in the way that we are attending to our experience? And we can learn about that more subtly, and more with more clarity, if we pay closer attention to what's going on in here. So he did say the path is, first of all, you've got to take a much closer look. But this is what we want to investigate. This is the heart of what we want to investigate. Our suffering and the path to the end of it. Our suffering and the way we've been addressing it that might not be quite as effective as we thought it was. The ways that the way we address it may actually keep it going, etc., etc. You know. But first, we have to settle down a little bit more. Let the water settle a little bit more in here, the muddy water, so that we can see what's what. How we're participating in proliferating our own distress. Yeah? So that's really the nugget of karma that I want to speak to this morning. And what I would welcome us to do, to play with, as we'll often say, to play with, to explore a bit in our guided meditation this morning, okay?